So the first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you. Um, I decided to do this discussion forum in honor of Black History Month. And I thought this would be a really good topic and an opportunity for us as coaches to come together and talk about the state of the coaching industry when it comes to diversity. And so I framed this coaching while Black, but you're going to find that as we have the discussion and go on, we're going to be bringing in other awareness around other diversity aspects, not just as it impacts the Black community, but this actually impacts diversity as a whole. So there's a bigger question that's out there that we as coaches can talk about and tackle tonight. The next thing I would like to say, the way this is structured is after the welcome and our speakers introduce themselves, we're going to get right into it. And then at the end, we're going to have Q&A. So please don't worry if you have a burning question, if there's something you want to know more about, if something that you want to go deeper on, we ask you to wait till the last 15 minutes or so, and you can ask your questions, and we're happy to spend more time with you and address anything that pops up for you as we're having this discussion. So that's really it, kit and caboodle. Are there any questions before we get started? Okay. This is very informal, but we hope it's going to be thought-provoking. And so I'm going to open up with introductions. I'll do mine very, very briefly, and then I'm going to have Leslie and Joseph introduce themselves. One of our panelists, I believe she's running late. As soon as she gets here, we'll let her in. But hopefully she's okay. And why I just hope that she's okay and safe, and hopefully she'll join us soon. So I am Dr. Dawn Reid. I'm a certified PCC coach. I'm also a certified mental health coach. And for those who know me, I am the owner of Reid Ready Live Coaching, which is an accredited coach training provider. And we provide coach training and recertification training, mentoring for coaches. And that's all I'm going to say about me. So Leslie, I would love for you to introduce yourself and let people know who you are.
Hello, my name is Leslie Cleland, and I'm currently a board certified coach. I've been coaching for a few years now, but recently became board certified through CCE Global, and I am the CEO and owner of Commission Chic Coaching, and that provides services to men and women, particularly those who are wanting to make a shift in their life, career, family, parenting, any type of shift is my specialty. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. And again, you want to know more, we do have the bio sheet in the chat. Mr. Joseph Grant, which I'm very excited to have him on as well. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Bam. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joseph Grant. I am a board certified coach with various coaching credentials, as well as degrees. I have a background in business, background in exercise physiology, and working on a doctorate in theology. And my approach and objective with coaching is pouring into the lives and lifestyles of others so that they're aligned. A lot of times we want things, but we're not in alignment spiritually, mentally, and physically to receive them. So work with people, organizations, profits, nonprofits, pretty much can build anything, implementing core principles and integrity. And I won't get into the businesses because I have several companies, but I'm just here to serve, you know. Feel free to, I'm not hard to find, reach out. And yeah, this is social media, anybody can be found. Yeah, feel free to reach out. And, I look forward to this call this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So you guys ready to get started? I'm ready to get started. So my first question is going to be around the ICF white paper on DEI. And specifically in the white paper, the white paper is stated that only 10% of the coaching membership identified as being Black or African Americans, 10%. So that's less than the population. So right there, we're not being represented in just in ICF. We're not even talking about the industry as a whole, because there's other research. Adam Grant has done research. There's another author, he just slipped my head, I'm so sorry. But there's other researchers out there who also demonstrated that as low as 5%, when you talk about the industry, not just ICF, but the industry, are Black coaches, people who identify as Black coaches. And that's a shame as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to be very transparent about my particular feelings about it. It is a shame. So one of the questions I have for the panelists is, how does diversity or a lack of diversity impact the coaching profession, coachees seeking help, and we as coaching professionals who identify as part of the African diaspora? So Leslie, I'm gonna go ladies first, and feel free to start off with the answer to that, and then I'm gonna ask Joseph to hop right in, right behind you.
So it sounds like there's a couple parts to your question. So if you can repeat the first part.
Yep. So the first part is, how does a lack of diversity impact the coaching profession? So we'll start with that one, the coaching profession as a whole.
Right. I think it affects the coaching industry in a big way. I think some things that we noticed through COVID is that more people went into therapy and coaching, and they really wanted somebody to identify with their certain demographic. So I feel like that, from what I was hearing from people seeking coaching and even friends that were seeking coaching and therapy, that, you know, they were hard to find people that fit a certain demographic that they were interested in and felt that they could be more relatable to, and it just wasn't out there. And that was even before COVID. I think it became more prevalent during COVID. And even though it's a small number, I do see an increase in more diversity with coaches. But you're right, it is still small in comparison to the entire industry. So I think it's very impactful.
Any thoughts, Joseph, that you want to chime in to that part of the question? How do you feel that this lack of diversity is impacting the profession from your experience?
From my understanding, I am uncertain. So there's data in regards to the organizations. The flip side of the coin is that during the pandemic, or even prior to the pandemic, or even now, there isn't data for the amount of people who say that they're coaches who may not have the ICF credentials. So who knows if we're going on the data, then sure. But I mean, there's 50,000 people who were mindset my. There's clothing coaches. There's a coach for everything now. So yes, so I guess data alone done by those organizations or entities, that's what that is. But there's a wide range of other coaches in other spaces, also other sets of data that's out there.
So what other sets of data have you seen? Because I know Adam Grant, who's a leader in this industry, who've done this type of research across the industry, not just ICF. So, and as I mentioned earlier, with ICF, they identified within the organization 10%. Adam Grant, if I'm not mistaken, identified 8% within the industry. And Passamore is another one. The researcher was another one who did industry-wide research of about 8% or 8 to 10% also identifying as Black, African American, Caribbean, or a person of color. So there is data out there that says people who are in organizations or who are coaches who identify as being a Black coach, there's not many of them out there that's really saying, hey, yes, I'm a coach, or yes, I'm a professional coach or certified coach, even for BCC, IAC, ICF, EMCC. All of these particular organizations are saying there is a lack of diversity. And going back to what Leslie is saying, so we got the data. And then going back to what Leslie is saying, many clients, matter of fact, BetterUp did a research as well. So BetterUp is one of the major coaching platforms. They also had a huge campaign trying to get more people of color, because a lot of their clients coming in said, we want somebody that represents us. So there is data out there that says there is a lack of representation.
Respond to me. So.
But if you're seeing something different, I would love to hear another point of view. But from the research, the studies that I've seen, the huge organizations that do the work in this space, they're all saying it's not even representative, just talking about Black coaches. And then when you go to male coaches, white, Black, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. There's very few male coaches in the industry too. But if
Sure.
you see something else, tell me, because I want to know.
No, my only point was that there's coaches, quote unquote, and or so called,
Yeah,
who may not have the credentials of coaching.
true.
That's all that was my only point. There's everyone's a coach now, and some of them are winning in the coaching space, and you can't tell them that they're not coaches.
True. And
So,
that's something that we're going to hit on when we talk about the training piece, the training, the certification, and the credentials. So I want you to hold that thought, because we're going to circle back to that when we get to those questions around those who aren't certified, whether BCC, IAC, MCC, IFC, those particular individuals who don't fit in that category, but they've woken up and said, I'm a coach. And you're right, there are many of them that are very successful, hands down. However, this impacts coaches of color very differently than it would non-coaches of color. And we do want to address that too as we continue this conversation. So the second part to that question was, how do you feel this impact the coachee? So again, I know I can speak from a personal experience, as well as when we look at the research studies around this, where I've had clients say, I chose you for two reasons. One, I loved your bio and your experience, but you look like me. And I feel like you'd identify with me. I feel like I'm not going to be judged. Right. So I want to bring to light, how do you feel the lack of diversity can impact coachees and their experience with coaching? Joseph, would you like to take a start with this one?
sure. So that answer is I'm not sure. So a wide range of my clientele is a diverse group. So I used to own a couple of wellness centers and personal training studios, and 97% of my clientele was not African Americans. So
Was not African American.
correct.
Right.
So yeah, so it's interesting. When I did, well, at that time, my cost for personal training or whatnot is maybe like $100 per session. So now in 2024, you can get a trainer for maybe like $25 per session. So then African African Americans didn't look at it as a necessity; they looked at it as a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
Once the numbers started to shift and they knew that they wanted the service, and I did good work, that I started to attain African American women clientele base.
Mm-hmm.
So on my end, and I had been locked in with clientele through other businesses,
Right.
whether they were at blacks or whites or whatever the race or culture was. So I really couldn't tell you that,
Okay.
because I haven't necessarily been impacted, because we start businesses to profit.
Right.
So I mean, I started it to profit, and I was profiting, and then
I hear you, but you made a point, and to your point, you said 97% of your clientele were not African American. But
correct.
that's what we're speaking to. And to your point, there I can see, and I agree, it makes a good point that some people of color, from a coachee perspective, the client perspective, may see coaching as a luxury. It is expensive. Coaching is expensive cost, especially good coaching, quality coaching. It's going to cost. And so I can see, to your point, to that too, but that's the whole thing that I'm noticing, the research is demonstrating, is that people who are who identify as part of the African diaspora, and even Asian, Indian, I've seen in other cultures too, they want to see people that look like them. That doesn't mean they're not going to go to someone that doesn't look like them, but they feel more comfortable. And studies have shown that you are more likely to feel much more comfortable and have a different type of success when you are working with someone that you identify with. So to your point, when I hear 97% of your clients are not Black or identify as Black, that kind of supports what we're talking about tonight, that there is a gap. There is a gap here, and people do want to see coaches that look like them. LGBTQ clients want to see people that look like them or have a same identity as them. So there's a case for it. But but thank you. I appreciate your input. It's good. It's good. And it gives us a different perspective. Leslie, what are your thoughts to this?
So my thoughts are, traditionally anybody could go to anybody to be a coach, right?
Yep.
You have a need and you're going to find anybody to kind of fit your need. What I've noticed or has been my experience is that when a coachee selects you based on a demographic need, as well as your coaching ability, that they're more inclined to refer family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so for other demographics, you may just have that one customer or client coachee and you'll be done. But with somebody who represents your culture or your demographic, they're more inclined to, like I said, refer, and you have more clients come in based off that one coachee that represents your demographic need.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay. Thank you. Thank you both for that segment. So we're going to move on to the training part of it, the training questions I have around diversity. So I know for myself, I know for some of my students who identify as Black, and other coaches who identify as part of the African diaspora, many of us have had, I would say, not as beneficial training. Now, I had great training. Don't get me wrong. I love my training. I learned a lot. Obviously, I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have good training. But I will say that there were some aspects that felt very much that it didn't represent my experience, how we ask a question. Meaning, is it more, for example, if I were to say, I felt discriminated against, and someone said, well, how do you know you were discriminated against? That would not necessarily be a good question to ask someone who is not feeling secure or who've had some discrimination experiences, and to say, well, you have to show proof that you were discriminated against. These are someone's feelings and experience. And that was one of the things that I had, as part of the work that I've done in the DEI space, is how do we frame these questions so that we're not making people feel like I have to prove that I had an experience, and making them feel uncomfortable, because then that can cause them to shut down. And as coaches, that's not what we want to occur. So I bring that up to say that in my coach training program, there were those types of questions. And it was like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't feel good, because you're telling me my experience wasn't real. I have to prove it. So I want to talk a little bit about, how well do you feel coach training or programs incorporate diversity, social cultural nuances, programs, in order to really reach true diversity, like a larger demographic, not just one set of demographics? And Leslie, I'll let you start us off.
Yeah, reflecting back to my own training through CCE Global, it was self-directed. And the program that I chose, the scenarios and the different coaching sessions that we observed and listened to were not very diverse. It was more along the lines of these are particular situations that are happening within, and it was mostly surrounded by a shift in career
Mm.
or an issue with a family member. Didn't really hit on many things other than that, like just those two issues, but with different people. So it really didn't have a lot of diverse situations or diverse experiences that you could reflect back to. So I felt like I didn't think about it at the time, but I think it would have been nice to have scenarios that had different diverse things, like maybe a real cultural um, relationships. Maybe, you know, dealing with death of a certain
Mm.
cultural figure, like something like that, to kind of bring in like different things. It wasn't a lot of different things. It was a lot of the same things, like a slight shift in career or finances, but it wasn't anything specific to like maybe like a low income or a single parent or substance abuse, even though, you know, I know there's a difference between,
True.
you know, therapy and life coaching, but even something like that had small hints of different types of things would have been nice. And my program didn't offer that at all. So
And that actually aligns with other anecdotes and other essays around coach training programs, where I know a lot of organizations are starting to look at how are we creating these scenarios and coaching opportunities for the trainee to learn, because it's very um as you said, non-diverse. And that's something that we are hearing about. And I do know that there's work being done, at least on the ICF level, of how we're doing these scenarios. Joseph, do you have any input and experience, any thoughts in this area? I think you're on mute.
you're
I'm
on mute.
sorry. You're on mute. Uh-oh. I think you're still on mute. There you go. Now we hear your voice. Thank you.
Yeah, I was saying that maybe it's contingent on the particular training.
That's true.
You know, in this field, you know, you get a certification and you get another one and you sharpen who you are. But one thing that stood out is, you know, general coaching that speaks to what the both of what you're sharing. And then you can just hop into maybe Christian coaching. Whereas the universal law of the language is love, and, you know, you serve every and all with and approach it that way. So I believe it's contingent on the particular training that you're
Oh,
receiving at that time, and it's wise to continue to get training so that you can see that there's so many other ways that we can approach training.
and that makes sense. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
I agree.
That's a good point. The type of training you get or the focus, because there are specializations. So you're right. If there's a specialization, that's what the scenarios may also revolve around. But then that also goes back into, if there aren't many programs that are diverse, even within the Christian conversation, even though you're getting a Christian training, for instance, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have clients that are non-Christian.
Sure.
Right. So it's having that ability that agility to be able to have those conversations with a variety of different clientele. I think these scenarios, the practice that we have as coaches, would be beneficial. But that's a really good point. I think the type of training definitely can influence the type of scenarios. I want to go back to what you're saying, since we're talking about the training part, the cost. Now, I know of all of us who've gone through training, it's expensive. Then it's expensive to keep it up every year. I know as an ICF coach, we have to recertify every 3 years. That's a cost. We have to do our membership every year. That's a cost. And then if you have a program like myself, that has to be recertified every year, every 3 years. It's a huge investment. How do you think this impact, especially Black coaches who want to really differentiate themselves, become credentialed, whether BCC, IFC, it doesn't matter, but they want to be credentialed by a body and this expense that goes with it? Do you think that this is one of the things that keep people out of it or from becoming certified? Or what are your thoughts on that piece?
Me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure, Joseph, you go right
Oh,
ahead.
no. Um, well, for one, I think that all of them should be my clients then, so that I can teach them, that there's no concept of cost. It's a matter of whether you want it or not. And when you align yourself for that, then and welcome it, then it can come to you. However, that adopting that may require some work, and then faith and owning your number. You know, a lot of times people may want something, but they don't own the number for their life or their lifestyle. And if you're not in alignment then the number's never going to happen. So I would pour into them and have long conversations on what owning your number is and means, and that cost is just what matters is if you want something or not. And I mean, to each its own. But when you have an alignment, what costs you $70 might cost me 10. I could call a coaching entity and somebody say, "Oh, hey, you know what? I heard great things about you. Can I offer you this? Don't tell anybody. I give this to you for this, that, or the third price." So I guess it's contingent on your alignment and how you view what a cost is and investing.
Yeah, I would.
Leslie?
Okay, I thought he was finished. I was going to say, just like something Joseph mentioned earlier, like everybody is claiming to be a coach. Everybody has the ability to be a coach. And yes, that's true. And I think there's something to be said that you sought a certification in order to bring more validity to the services that you really want to provide, because anybody can say that they're a coach and it could have different meanings, for different people. But the fact that, you went the extra mile, took that step to align yourself to a certification that can stand behind your practice, I think that there's value in that. And I think overall, clients or customers, they look for that. Like they want to make sure that, you have that experience and that exposure and that you're certified to give them the guidance that they need in order to, make changes.
True. I think it's important at this point to also distinguish between the credential and the certification, because you can go to Udemy and get a certification as a coach. What I'm really referring to is the investment when you are becoming BCC, IFC, IAC, EMCC, when you're really aligning with a legitimate body, because that's the thing that distinguishes between people who call themselves a coach because they woke up and said I could do it, and those who really go through the training, the rigor, the time, the investment to be a coach. But then when you bring in the diversity piece, again, studies on this, many studies on this. African Americans in particular are one of the highest consumers. We spend the most. But yet when you talk about wealth, we own less than 1% of the wealth. So there's a gap there. So we're spending a lot of money. We'll go get our Beyonce tickets, right? We'll get our red bottom shoes. Okay. But when you start talking about investing in your professional development, being a legitimate coach so that you're taken seriously, that's a whole different concept. And I can tell you, because I do belong to other coaching groups, and many of the members in those groups may not be credentialed. I want to really distinguish between credentials and certification. They're not credentialed, and they don't want to because of the cost. And then that goes back into why is there's a lack of diversity in these different organizations that are the governing bodies for the industry. So I go back to the question, how does the cost impact? Because again, it sounds great to say, oh, well, you don't have faith and you're not aligned, but it's a whole different thing when you're in somebody else's life. And if that's not where their mindset is, they may want this. They may be really desiring to see their purpose come to fruition. But when rent or mortgage and child tuition and car note and food and all these things start to come to play and they look at their bank account and they go, it's not really there. It sounds nice. There is going to be a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it keeps them from joining these organizations and really building up their professional development to distinguish them as being a coach. Many Black coaches who identify as Black coaches will go to Udemy, will go to Coursera, will go to someone else because it's less than $500, or they could get a discount, to Joseph's point, but it's not a recognized, accredited program. And they're still not set up to be credentialed coaches. They are still I call myself a coach. I got this training for $10, but I call myself a coach. There's still a difference, right? And so I'm just curious to see, can diversity because of income create a challenge? Is this something that the organizations maybe need to look at? Should prices be lower? Is there something else? Should there be grants? Should there be scholarships for these training? I know IC, again, I'm ICF heavy because that's who I belong to. But I know ICF, they have grants so that you can go to school and get an education for free or very low cost, right? I don't know if BCC does that. Maybe you guys can speak to that.
Yeah,
Okay.
BCC, they offer several different programs, like, so for instance, if you have, let's say, if you have an associate's, if you have a bachelor's in social sciences, they'll give you a certain amount of credits you would have to use. And as you, if you have, the more degrees that you have, the less hours you have to put in, and that affects the cost tremendously. So like if their typical program for, like, let's say for an associate's degree, or somebody who's just interested in getting credentialed with a high school diploma, let's say the cost might be $4,000. But if you have a master's degree or a doctor's degree, your cost may be $1,200. And they also offer scholarships as well to people in the field, professionals who are looking to get credentialed.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thank you both.
I mean, it's not $500, no, but it's
right.
every little bit helps.
No, but it's not 4,000.
Right. But a master's degree and a doctor's degree is very expensive. So if they're allowing you to use those credits or that degree in order to
offset it,
offset some of the hours, and at a reduced rate, I think that's pretty good.
Do either of you feel like some of the organizations can be doing more? Or do you think especially in order to bring more diversity in? And again, I don't want this just to be about people of color, but also the LGBTQ community, those who with unique disability and unique abilities. Like, we need to see more representation across the social identities, because it does make a difference in how people will achieve success. There's so much research on this that it really does make a difference. So, like, is there anything that you feel organizations can be doing differently, better, to improve how the cost impact those who may want to become trained as professional coaches? Joseph, would you like to contribute?
Sure. Say your question one more time.
Okay.
No. I was
So it's more,
thinking
what
about
else?
something that you were
That's
sharing
all
earlier.
good. It's all good. So what else, if anything, maybe nothing, what else do you believe that organizations can do in order to help maybe influence more participation in becoming credentialed coaches in particular? And again, maybe nothing at all. Maybe they're doing everything. Who knows? But in order to really create diversity for those who may not be able to afford the training. And again, I don't want to relegate just for Black people, because there's a lack of men, there's a lack of LGBTQ, there's a lack of especially abled.
I care enough to do it.
Oh, sorry. Who's ever, I think you might want to go on mute. Thank you. Just, is there anything that organizations can do differently, in your opinion, in your thoughts?
From a business space and from Humbly, I've never taken out a loan or a grant a day in my life.
Good.
From a business base, then we have these conversations and we just form the organization and or business, and we set our own tone for what we want to see within any organization or community. We can fight, or we can create our own lane, whereas we're the ones that are winning the fight. So it would require this conversation
Yep.
and say, hey, listen, we're done talking about this because I am. And then you just form what needs to be formed. And then you say, hey, listen, so and so has it over here for this price, but this is what we have it over here. And we have a little more flexibility. That's what my approach would be, because my lane has been building business
Yep.
other companies.
Yep. Now, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because when we get to the strategies piece, I'm going to come back to that very same thing. So I'm glad you said that. You went ahead of me, but it's good. I'm smiling. I'm happy because that is my thought. Thank you. Love it. Leslie, what are your thoughts on that?
I was going to say, it would be nice if, I mean, yes, there should be a more global approach to coaching, and not be specific, because I guess your goal as a coach is to meet the masses and you don't want to limit yourself.
Exactly.
But I think it would be nice if, any of these accredited programs did offer specialty programs that could focus, so that you have another designation that could focus on specific diverse audiences, like LGBTQ, or different cultures, an array of other different services. I think that would be ideal.
Awesome. Thank you both. So we're already at 7:40. Time flew. And I didn't ask global questions, but I'm going to go toward the more in the strategy. Let's talk about strategies. How do we improve diversity? How do we really increase or spread the different representations that's needed in the coaching industry? And to piggyback off of what you said, Joseph, now we all know the EMCC, which is the European Mentoring and Coaching Consortium. I think I'm saying that right. Specifically, they focus on coaching from the perspective of a Eurocentric, westernized perspective. They're organized. They tell you on their website what countries that they focus on. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's great, but it does leave out other countries that are not Eurocentric or European or Western in nature. And to piggyback off of what you were saying, Joseph, would one of the strategies, what strategy you think would make sense in connecting our own, or having a consortium or organization that's more based on the African diaspora, that will and again, anybody could join it, but the focus is storytelling, certain scenarios that are specific within the African diaspora perspective. Any thoughts on that? And since Joseph brought it up, I'm going to let him talk about it a little bit more.
You want me to say more than what I said?
Well, if you got more to say, if not, I'll give it to
Leslie. Just sign me up for it.
Like when we get started.
What do we've talked enough about it?
Gotcha. Love it. Love
it. There is a place, and us doing that is applying wisdom. We know sometimes it may appear that there's a box that people are in, and we can shift to think that the box doesn't even exist. And I shared earlier, just to deal with, we have the information and the knowledge and the facts and the data, but wisdom is what we do with those things moving forward. Information. But the flip side of the coin is that some things require timing, and as we were talking, this field isn't as old of other fields.
That is true.
So there is room for growth and change, and we are the change makers. With the being mindful that what is coaching? Maybe 20 years, maybe. Prior to the term coaching, people were called consultants. So then there's a difference in language that we start, putting out there. So some things are just a timing thing. But in regards to what we were sharing, the time is now to form what we want to form and do something.
Leslie, any final thoughts on your end?
Disagreeing with Joseph, and it starts from this very thing. It starts with a panel during Black History to talk about experiences. Like, that's how consortiums are made and built. And so it's just, it starts with this, and we just have to see it forward, move it forward, and and put more into it, put more stock into it. And then, we could have a consortium from the African diaspora.
Yep.
And it could be all the things that we just talked about during this panel, like having diverse credentialing, recruiting, all kinds of stuff. So that's my final thoughts.
Thank you. So I want to open it up for Q&A. Thank you, but first, thank you both for your honesty. Thank you both for your experience, your input. Thank you. This is great. Very insightful and a great alternate perspective that we can continue. I would like to see this conversation continued. And like you said, Joseph, it is time. It is time for us to start to create something in our lane, especially if there's the ability to integrate or to collaborate isn't there. There is the opportunity for us to have our own. And so that could definitely create a difference. So thank you for sharing that insight. So I want to open it up to any type of Q&A. Are there anyone who's on the discussion? Please feel free to ask your questions. You're more than welcome. You can put it in the chat. You can come on mute if you like. You're more than welcome to ask any questions at this time from anyone on the panel. So again, you can come off mute. You can put it in the chat. Feel free. Any questions? Oh, and I see. Oh my goodness. Ariska, you're there. We're so sorry you joined in late. Do you have any thoughts? I don't know how if you just joined or if you were able to hear anything. Would you like to have any closing remarks or any thoughts to share? No, okay. Well, I'm glad you were able to join. I'm sorry that you can't get it.
So it was Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
I'm on Central Time, so I thought it started at 7. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Sorry. It's okay. Well, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. And your information is still in the bio so people can still learn about you. And I'm happy to have another event where you and I can chit chat and have a conversation. So are there any questions in the chat? Okay. Well, again, I want to thank everyone for participating, for being here. I hope this was insightful. I hope that you found it beneficial or you got some information from it. There is work to be done. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. There is work to be done. The data shows it. And this is an opportunity for us as Black coaches or African American coaches, however you define yourself, to really make our mark. And I think it's time because people are asking to see representation. They want to see you. And so this is the opportunity for us to really figure out how do we get more involved as professional coaches, not just say we're coaches, but to really do the work to be the coaches. Oop, I see a message. Hold on. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Arlene. Thank you so much. I appreciate your thoughts. She said, thank you for this valuable discussion. It was thoughtful and thought-provoking. Thank you so much. With that being said, if there's no questions, I'm going to let you guys go and enjoy the rest of your evening. We're going to, oh, I'm sorry, Joseph, you had something. I'm sorry.
I want to say you did a fantastic job moderating this evening. You had us
Definitely.
in the hot seat, and it was awesome. And what comes with this, as we're building, comes with accountability.
Yes.
So I trust that we all walk in that and we connect. But fantastic job, Leslie. Fantastic job, Dawn. Um, you're like Scarface when he says, "Who put this together? Me. That's who." No,
Oh,
fantastic job this evening.
And so did you. Thank you, because I'll be honest. I'll be honest. When things are too like sweet and I'm like, oh, come on, you guys, let's get into the meat of this. So I value that we had a real conversation. So thank you. And it's good to have different opinions and different thoughts. So thank you. And I want to do it again because I love these conversations. This is good. I think it's good for us too. So again, I want to thank you. Thank you so much, Diane. I
yes, thank you. I
appreciate
thought
it.
I heard my internet went out, so I don't, if I missed something, I'm sorry.
We're just thanking and
Okay.
closing out and letting everybody get ready to go back to wherever they're doing, eat dinner, play with the kids, play with the spouse. And again, thank you for joining. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. And please follow my panelists. Their information is in the sheet. You can download the sheet, it's in the chat. You guys have an amazing rest of your night. And again, thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.